Good morning everyone and welcome to my channel English Literature. Today we'll read about the 100 Years' War. Middle English period of England was torn between internal and external wars. The internal war was War of Roses and the external was 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War is long dragging year from 1337 to 1453. And actually it was more than 100 years. But for the convenience, the historians call it the 100 Years' Wars. The war was between France and England. France versus England. English royal house of Plantagenet versus the French royal house of Valois. Duration. About the royal house of Plantagenet, royal house of Plantagenet means from William the Normandy, William the Conqueror, to Henry the Seventh. It was the royal house of Plantagenet. Before Henry the Seventh, from Henry the Seventh, it started Tudor dynasty. I have talked in details about this Plantagenet, Tudor, York, Lancaster in the War of Roses. You must check that video. The link will be provided below, and from there you can understand it. You must understand this Plantagenet. Duration. This war lasted for 116 years. Though it is named 100 Years War. Not continuous. Sometimes ceasefire. Reason. Over the succession of French throne. It was the reason. Setting. Charles IV died. Charles IV, French king, was died without an heir, and Edward III claimed the French throne as his nephew. Edward III was a nephew of Charles IV. So after Charles IV's death, without an heir, Edward III claimed the French throne. Major battles: Battle of Crecy, Battle of Agincourt. Now, come to the story. Norman conquest. 1066. William the Conqueror of France took the English throne. And what happened? French and English amalgamation. And English holdings in France it will be English holdings in France and France's holding in England. These things were the causes of primary conflict. English kings had to act as the vassals of French kings as they hold some areas in France. So you understand, suppose it is France and here it is England. And when William of Normandy conquered England, what happened? He has some land in France and now is the king of England. So the lands, some lands are in England, England's holding in France, again France's holding in England, they just amalgamated. And there is continuous conflict was going on between these rights, their overpowering of these lands, their power over the lands. The English kings has act as the vassal of French kings as they hold some areas in France. But this vassal versus ruler, who will be vassal and who will be ruler? This conflict continued. In 1328, Charles IV of France died without an heir. His closest male relative was Edward III of England, his nephew. Actually, Edward III's mother was Isabella. Edward III's father, Edward II, was married to French Princess Isabella. So, when Edward III born, he was the nephew of France. And in France, there is a law. That law is called Salic law. What is the Salic law? Bad law. No female will be allowed to succeed the throne. No female will be allowed to succeed the throne. That was the Salic law. And for that reason, Isabella cannot be the successor. And Isabella's claim that French throne for his son Edward III by the law of proximity of blood. So there is another law that is a law of proximity of blood. So Charles IV When Charles IV died, Charles IV's close relative, the law of proximity of blood, was Edward III. So on that ground, Isabella, Edward's mother, and Charles' sisters, Isabella, she was thinking that my son's claim is proper and just. But what is the problem? This Salic law, the French people did not agree with this point. That due to the Salic law, no female could claim the right. So if Isabella could not claim the right, how was it possible that her son will claim? Therefore, she could not demand or transmit a right she herself did not possess. Understand this point, that she could not demand to transmit a right she did not possess. The right to succeed the French throne was not possible for Isabella due to Salic law. So what he was claiming, that through the law of close proximity of blood, that Edward III will be the king of France, also at the same time king of England, and also at the same time king of France. But that was not possible according to French people, because through the Salic law, Isabella will not be given the priority. So how can her son will be given? The French people selected a native Frenchman rather than Edward III. A native Frenchman who is not related to blood with Charles IV. They selected that person rather than Edward III. So the throne passed instead to Charles's patrilineal cousin, Philip, Count of Valois. Now started 100 Years' War. Edward III could not tolerate it, and he just took his army to France at Normandy. 1337 May, Edward with his armed force claimed the French throne. Edward's son, Edward the Black Prince, died in the battle. We have discussed it in War and Roses that Edward the Black Prince will died in battle, and that's why after Edward the III's death, Edward the Black Prince's son, Edward IV, will be on throne. Now 1356, French King John II was imprisoned. 1378, under the French King Charles V, the French regained the position. Henry V of England versus Charles VI of France. The war was progressing in that way. The kings were died among the people were dying, kings were dying, next king was in the throne, and again the war was going on, dragging over. Charles VI, what happened now? Charles VI was mentally ill, very weak person. 1415 Battle of Agincourt, very, very important. And 1424 Battle of Vernon. These types of battle are going on from time to time. And in the meantime, there was ceasefire, a brief stoppage of the war. Now, Henry V won a great victory and forced the French king to accept him as heir to the French throne. That was a very progressive step for the English troops. But what happened soon? Henry V died. And when Henry V died, French refused the previous claim. So the war began once again. English forces were winning, but suddenly something happened. A dramatic turn of events. Henry V died suddenly, along with Charles VI in 1422. Charles VI also died, and there came a change. And what was the change? Joan of Arc came into the French political scene. She was the miracle girl. Have you read Saint John by Bernard Shaw? In that, Bernard Shaw just dramatized Joan of Arc in a glory. She was just a glory. Joan of Arc, 1412 to 1431, very short lifespan. She was a peasant girl who at the age of 17 travelled to the French palace and insisted to join in the siege of Orleans. She boosted the French power, played a key role in defeating the French soldiers. Dramatically, the French army overthrew the English power at Orleans and lifted the siege. Till then, what happened? English power seized Orleans of France, but with the leadership of Joan of Arc, English power was overthrown, and she lifted the siege of Orleans. 1429 AD, the siege of Orleans, French conquered England. After this, the French succeed continue. Siege of Orleans withdraw, actually. Siege of Orleans withdraw. 1431 AD, but Joan of Arc was captured by the Burgundians. So, she just faced some glory for a brief moment, a sparkle of fame, and then she had a pathetic death to die. She was transferred to English prison. They put her in trial, charged her with heresy, and burnt her on stake on 13th May 1431, only at the age of 19. Can you imagine? Only at the age of 19, this girl was burned to stake because he led the French army, and just they defeated the English troops. 1453, Valois dynasty of France won the battle at the Battle of Castillon. Although the Battle of Castillon, that was the last battle actually in 100 Years' War, significant battle, it is considered the last battle of the 100 Years' War. England and France remained formally at war for another 20 years. English power lost the 100 Years' War, and English nobles started expressing their grievances, financial losses, high taxes, social and political unrest. This may be a big cause to the next civil war, that is the War of Roses. Okay, this long dragging year war for 116. So many kings died. The kings died due to their age or any other problem, but people died in the battlefield. But most of all, the pathetic death was death of Joan of Arc. Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.